how someone has to put the world right, even if it means you all leave me again, even if it means that I'm...
Man, talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place. Carol has found herself in a very complicated situation. We are back with my deep dive into this penultimate episode, the 8th episode of season 1 of Pluribus. In this episode, we see despite almost dying, Manousos isn't backing down nor stopping to meeting Carol in hopes to fixing the world, but we get the return of Zosa, and her and the others returning comes with a lot of new layers to the show. From Carol's secret research and discovering how the others sleep, communicate, their plans for the universe, and so much more, including a kiss that is an absolute game changer. We've got some games to play in this episode, so let's break it all down. Full spoilers ahead. Now, the first thing I want to discuss in this week's breakdown is the title of this episode, which is pretty important. Episode 8 is titled Charm Offense. Now, honestly, I've never heard anyone in my life use this phrase, but it's a perfect title for this episode. The phrase means a campaign of flattery and friendliness designed to achieve the support or agreement of others. It's actually funny because when I looked up what it meant, this list popped up. It read, what are the signs of charm offense? Now I clicked on this list and here are the 5 signs that your partner may lure you into an unhealthy relationship. Now the first thing that popped up on this website was controlled dating of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now remember this very conversation we had a couple weeks ago about how I was saying that the hive mind is basically wolves in sheep's clothing? Now, I'm not going to go over every single detail of this 5 things that they have listed down, but it is pretty much what we see the others doing with Carol in this episode. Number 1 being, they tell you everything you want to hear. Next one being, they engage in future faking, which is a tactic to make you invest in a relationship. Next thing on the list is they love bomb you. If you're only on a few dates and they're already showering you with extreme affection. Next thing is they buy you big gifts. And last but not least, your gut telling you something isn't right. With all that being said, let's keep those things in mind as we break down this episode. Now we open this episode with blood dripping onto someone's shoe and more blood hits the floor as the camera pans and it's Manousos. He's alive and in the hospital bed, saved by the others who pulled him from the nightmare of the Darien Gap. The antibiotics they gave him worked, and again, it's important to keep in mind that they are the ones who literally saved his life. But when they tell him that he needs to stay to fully recover, we can see the wheels turning in his head, as his eyes look over at the pair of medical scissors on the tray next to his bed. Next scene, we see Manousos with those same scissors in his hand as he has them pressed against the neck of one of the others as they walk out of the room. Now, he's determined to leave in this hospital. There's no discussion to be had, no debate to be had, but before he goes, he insists on paying his bill. He demands to pay for every single bandage, every single pill, every moment of this care. Now, the others calmly explain with a weapon to their throats, smiling, how much his visit would have been before the joining. Now it's here that he realizes that he's in Panama as the others offer him an itemized receipt, and he ultimately decides to leave the hospital to continue his journey to Carol, which according to Google is about a 69-hour drive as he leaves. Now as we know, the others need consent and stem cells before changing the uninfected, but I wouldn't be surprised if they took blood samples from him while he was asleep and they could possibly test on his blood somewhere later down the road. Now last week, I floated the idea that the show was positioning Manousos as a potential villain, and some of you all thought I was making a bit of a reach. Now, when I say villain, I'm not talking about a mustache twirling villain. I mean in the sense of a villain that he is going against the hive mind and he's as much of a threat as Carol once was. I mean, just look at the scene that we just saw. He was literally holding scissors to the neck of someone who just saved his life, all because he doesn't trust them, doesn't trust their medical advice. Again, we are seeing that Manousos is so focused on his mission to find Carol that he is willing to destroy anything, even those trying to help him to get there. Again, I'm doubling down. I think Manousos is one dangerous individual, but not in the sense that he's like this all evil person. He just believes what he's doing is the right thing. Now we transition over to the exact person he's traveling to, and that's Carol. We find Carol in the kitchen making a non-alcoholic drink for her and Zosa, a welcoming gesture for this reunion and this temporary breakup between them. Now this being the first time that Carol and Zosa have met in Carol's house since the grenade explosion and since Carol drugged her, but hey, The past is the past. And despite all of that history, despite the multiple threats, Zosa, and by extension the others, don't hesitate in drinking the drink that Carol has made for them. That right there just continues to show us as an audience the fascinating exploration of the others and just their prime directive of making the uninfected happy, even at a potential cost of themselves. We watch as they make small talk as Zosa points out how nice the O'Keefe piece looks in Carol's living room. And Carol, who has just recently experienced so much isolating alone time, she immediately gets flustered. As she says that she was planning on returning it as soon as she could, and she spins this story about protecting it from these loose animals like the wolves getting into the museum.
Yeah, that could be problematic.
Now, of course, this is a lie, but it comes from a place of this newfound vulnerability for Carol. Now, as they exchange some looks and some awkward silence, we see Carol gets a little nervous and even emotional about not knowing what to say next. I feel like this was either Carol just putting on an act, or this just continues to show this more vulnerable and forgiving side of her that we haven't seen before. Now, to break the ice, Zosa suggests a board game. Now, Carol immediately points out the obvious, that any game of strategy is pointless when the opponent has access to 7 billion minds. But then Zosa thinks of a perfect solution, and that is a game based purely on something from Carol's past, a game where Carol has a sense of control and has an advantage. I gotta point out, this whole exchange felt so familiar to anyone who's ever experienced a breakup with a partner or even a close friend, and that first meetup or the hangout is just so awkward, and you don't want to be too happy, but you also don't want to be too weird or standoffish. This scene and others later really capture that emotional turmoil really well. Now, the game they decide to play is called Spit. It's a fast-paced 2-player card game, no turns, just pure speed. It's a game Carol used to play with her cousins. Remembering the others always want to make the uninfected happy, Zosa repeats a line that Carol's grandmother would always say to make Carol feel this sense of nostalgia, as she even offers Carol's cousin, Henry, to pay a visit to her since the last time they saw each other was 20 years ago, but we see Carol denies. Now, that obviously is something new that we learned about Carol. It's only the second time we've heard about Carol's extended family beyond Helen and her parents. It's another little piece of her backstory showing that she hasn't had any contact with her family in at least 20 years. It also means that some of her family is alive, and obviously they're a part of the others in the hive mind, and it makes me wonder if we'll ever meet them at some point in the show. Now, it's here that we get to see the game within the game from both sides, but particularly from Carol and the game she's playing throughout this episode. She questions the others and Zosa on where the name of the game Spit came from, but the others can't recall why the game's called that. Again, this little detail proves to Carol that despite having the knowledge of 7 billion people, there are some things that they just don't have answers to. But another thing that I found interesting is how at first, call it mercy or call it being nice or simply being too slow, Carol is winning the game at first, but Zosa makes a remark about continuing to play the game to see if the others were letting her win or if they were just warming up.
Keep playing and you'll find out.
Now, we eventually see the others and Zosa win, and we see this very human reaction from them winning the game. Now, last week, we spoke to the potential deeper meaning of why the show chose to have the belladonna as the piece of art that Carol stole, and the idea of who's the toxic poisoning person between Carol and Zosa and the others. As again, this whole scene just makes me think that they're both sizing each other up. And that's really the theme of this episode. Surface level fun masking deeper test. Are the others letting their guard down, or is this another layer of the game? Now outside, Carol learns that just in a few hours, the others will have completely returned to Albuquerque. As Carol calls it a night, Carol brings up where Zosa lives, and instead of answering it, we see Zosa just shows her. Now it's here for the first time, we as the audience, and of course Carol, see where and how the others sleep. Now it's no fancy hive mind lair, just a large empty arena. In this case, it's the real world Rio Rancho Event Center, where the others stay together for efficiency. Now it's here we get to see a little bit of that personality and sense of humor from Zosa and the others put it on display early on, as Carol makes a funny joke about the others having a giant orgy like from The Matrix Reloaded, which is a great reference by the way, as Zosa responds in such a hilarious way.
Not unless you wanted to.
I found that moment to be so funny, and the icing on the cake for me was the moment where Carol looked to see if the others were joking or if they were really taking maybe some life advice from Kumba. But secretly, I think the others were planting the seed for a more mature and sexual angle here with Carol, maybe even flirting, which comes to fruition a little bit later in this episode. Now, I know some people, even myself, wondered if maybe some of the animals around the world were infected by the joining, but here we get our answer with little bear Jordan, an uninfected dog whose owner is now a part of the collective. Now, Zosa offers for Carol to stay the night with them, and initially Carol says no thanks, but we cut to the very next scene to see that she decided to sleep over. The question is this a part of Carol's research, or her way of simply not wanting to sleep alone again like she did in the last 36 days in isolation? Now, not only that, but as we see Carol wakes up in the middle of the night, we see she finds her hand on Zosa's shoulder. Now, call it a habit from when her and Helen would sleep at night, or call it Carol now feeling extremely comfortable around the others like never before, and she's happy to be in the presence of other people. Again, assuming this isn't a part of Carol's plan, this is a huge step for her. Opening up her kindness to the others, experiencing where the others lie their heads, all new territory, but again, this to me is Carol having her cake and eating it because she has a hidden agenda that's going on here. Next morning, after a day of board games and ending with a sleepover, we see Zosa tells Carol that they've had a wonderful time with Carol and they're happy to be back in her life. Now, Carol is taking it all in, but she reciprocates the feeling she had a good time with the others. And again, this to me is a show really leaning into the idea of a couple taking the proper baby steps to regaining, or in this case, gaining a sense of trust with the other person and establishing a relationship and a bond. Now inside, and after experiencing what she's done with the others, we see Carol's got some new details to add to her list of things she knows about the others on her whiteboard. Now, one major new note is a big one, and that's number 6, and that is they eat people. It's so interesting that she's just now putting this on the board, considering that she found this out a while ago at this point. It was almost like she's writing this down to remind herself to keep focus and to not forget the goal, and that is to not fall for the kindness, but again, they do eat people. Again, this is Carol playing nice for now at least, and also making sure to not get too caught up in the others' overly nice behavior, but also taking advantage of them being naive and oversharing things when she asks them questions in a more casual manner. Now, I'm not sure if this is later in the same day or if this is the very next day, but we find Carol and Zosa on a hike together as they stop and overlook the beautiful view. Now, another example of this episode continuing to shedding light on Carol as we yet again get another detail that even the hive mind didn't know about her. She shares that she loves trains, particularly the sound of its horn.
You knew everything about me.
Not this.
It is the loneliest sound in the world.
You know, I'm trying to think of if I was in Carol's shoes, what would I like about the loneliness of the horn of a train? And I don't know, is it maybe the movement across vast empty distance? Let me know what you all thought of it in the comments below. Now, after hearing this, the others have the passing train honk its horn for Carol, who takes the nice gesture and makes it into her secret continuing investigation as she asks Zosa how exactly does the hive mind communicate with one another.
So, like radio?
Sort of, but radio transmission is like talking. It's conscious. Our communication is unconscious, homeostatic, like breathing.
They compare it to a radio signal, which is very interesting because this goes back to the original signal that started the joining, but this also to me 1000% make me think about the small detail of Manousos discovering the mysterious channel 86130 signal from a few episodes ago. I said it then and I'm saying it now, whether it's in next week's finale or next season, that signal will prove to be very important and most likely is how the hive mind is communicating with one another. Now, despite knowing the basics of how they're able to communicate with one another on a global scale, we see Zosa brings up the fact that there are still a lot of things that they don't fully understand. Now, to remind us and Carol that things aren't exactly perfect with the hive mind, we see Carol questions why they still need trains, as Zosa hesitates to respond because this is a very sensitive topic, as they still need them to move their food distribution, aka their human smoothies that John Cena has 8 times a day. Again, a reminder of the grim reality beneath the surface. Now we watch as the investigation continues from the mind now to the body. In a genius move, Carol takes Zosa for a massage. She asks another brilliant question. Do the others feel what they're feeling right now and giving themselves a literal massage?
Not exactly. It's kind of like in the last 10 minutes, there's been 1,674 deaths and 965 births. To feel everything all at once would be unbearable. But we know it as it happens. We're aware.
But they don't share the physical pain or pleasures that one individual experiences. An individual's physical experience is their own. File that away because it's absolutely critical for a future physical interaction between these two later in this episode. Now, can we just take a moment to appreciate how good it is to have Zosa back? The chemistry between the two actors is just phenomenal. To me, Zosa just has this calmly powerful presence that feels like a warm blanket on a cold day. She's just the perfect compassionate person for Carol to have in these type of scenes. Now, the setting shifts tonight under a sky full of stars. Now, for those keeping track at home, from learning where they rest their heads, to how they communicate, to now where the signal to Earth came from, Zosa shows Carol the real world Kepler-22 and Kepler-22b, its planet. Now, the others admire where the creators come from, this ocean world, and they close their eyes to picture it sometimes. Now, we watch as Carol plays as if she can't find it, letting Zosa guide her and makes it easier for her to spot it. This again has been Carol's strategy in a nutshell in this episode. Play submissive, be kind, and let them show off. All these little adventures, or you might call it a date, are just her way of subtly asking questions and learning and studying the others while entertaining their kindness. Now, this next moment might be a future detail we should all pay attention to and remember for later down the road. Zosa says that the others most likely will never meet those who granted them this so-called freedom and gift. But they know they love them and they will pay it forward however long it may take. They want to share this gift with every other existence in space. Okay, so who are they to decide that every single being in the cosmos, in the universe, needs this so-called gift? This moment here just tells us that this isn't just earthbound anymore. The other's ambition is universal. Again, it just brings up so many questions. Who are these creators and will we get more information on them in next week's finale? By the way, this whole sequence was so beautifully shot. The use of the lighting with the red light in the background and them looking up in the stars was just masterfully crafted. It is now the next morning, and as I've been alluding to throughout this breakdown, it is here we see all the notes and information that Carol has been gathering from Zosa since the others have been back. As we now have up to 12 items on this list with a ton of side notes as well. The new notes include their sleeping situation, how they communicate, their transportation of their food source, how they experience physical feelings, and we also see the signal and where they come from, and then we have this very important one here. The others are building a giant antenna to send a signal to space to share this gift, as we talked about, the entire universe possibly. Again, I am so interested in learning more about who these creators are and this virus and where it stems from and why they feel the need to share this gift with all living beings in the entire universe. Now, as Carol has ran out of her markers, she calls in a favor for Zosa to re-up. Zosa brings her new markers, and Zosa asks if this means that she's back to writing her Wakaro books. For a second, Carol thinks she's been caught, but she plays it cool, confirming yes, she's writing again. But we see that the others are excited by the news and hope they get the opportunity to read it once she's done.
Happy writing, Carol!
Back inside, Carol looks at her notes for a book and she smiles because to me, this is her now adding this new idea to her mission to keeping the others in the dark and to keep appearances going. If they want Wakaro, she's going to give them Wakaro, while the real story, her investigation into the truth, continues in secret. Again, not sure how much time has passed here, but we see that the two are now playing a game of crochet in which Zosa is winning due to the advantage of having the combined knowledge of all the sport's greatest players.
We're doing that.
Now, this speaks to the others having muscle memory that they share amongst them, which is so interesting. This shared muscle memory means that anyone, regardless of their age or experience, can know how to perform a pro level move even if their body can't actually execute it. For example, a child could know how to body slam an opponent from the memory of John Cena, or an elderly person can remember the perfect tennis serve from someone like Serena Williams. Now, Zosa questions Carol's best writing day and she doesn't have an answer for her, but this particular question was all a setup for a surprise the others have for Carol to show how happy they are to be back in her life, but to also show how happy they are that she's writing again. Now we watch as they drive to a diner, which is familiar, warm, and a place that Carol hasn't seen in years. But she recognizes it instantly. This is where her career first began. Now inside, it is packed. The smells, the sounds, the jukebox playing a nostalgic tune, it's all perfect. The others are here, casually eating, laughing, pretending it's just another Tuesday. It reminded me of Kumba's Bond movie moment all over again, a perfectly structured illusion or a loving gesture. Now Carol is overwhelmed as she smiles and laughs, but then reality kicks in. She remembers Bree, a server from years ago who made her feel seen and comfortable with being in a diner for hours in. But then Bree walks over. She pours Carol's coffee just like the good old days. Except Bree is now a part of the hive mind. And it was in this moment that the spell finally broke. And that's because Carol knows that this diner burnt down. It was gone. And the fact that the hive mind rebuilt it from scratch just to comfort her is way too much. Too perfect, too manipulative. Carol has to see this offering as not just nostalgia, but they're weaponizing her past. Now we watch as Carol leaves and she runs back home alone again, but not for long. It's now nighttime and Zosa arrives outside, and inside we see Carol give Zosa a drink and challenges her to stop saying we and referring to herself as I, and we can see that this is a struggle for Zosa. After learning what Bree has been up to all these years and where she is now, Carol shows her cards and finally drops her own mask of how she's been acting up until this point in the episode. She admits to the others that she never stopped her research and she's still searching for a way to undo the hive mind. Now, Carol wants to hear from the others that they know that she will never give up from fixing the world back to how it used to be, as Zosa and the others do exactly that.
Manipulative bullshit because you know I haven't given up. Admit it. Tell me you know I won't give up.
We know.
It's now time for honesty. As Carol admits liking the others, but we know she's talking about Zosa in particularly, but she knows that this doomsday clock is ticking for Zosa because of their decision to consuming food that will lead to their deaths in about 10 years. Carol breaks down expressing how painful and lonely it may be, but she's determined in fixing the world to being right again. This was the moment in this episode that it all came together. Yes, Carol wants to fix the world and is doing all this secret research to do so, but Carol also is very much interested in exploring a potential relationship with Zosa and experiencing what a life could look like if she's with her and them. By the way, what brilliant acting by these two actors, and particularly with Rhea and how outstanding she is in showcasing this complex situation that she finds herself in. Now, being encouraged to referring to herself as I, we see Zosa sees this emotional moment that Carol's in as an opportunity to take in their relationship to another level as she slowly walks up to Carol and kisses her. I couldn't help but to think about episode 1 when we saw the doctors get the virus and how they kiss people in order to spread the virus along. Zosa kissing Carol, and obviously it's not affecting her, but in a way it's affecting her emotionally and physically, and Carol, once who resisted the idea of ever joining the others in any way, has now embraced them and has essentially joined them in some way if you think about it. Now, Carol is shocked by this kiss, but ultimately leans in and kisses her back, and even though we don't see what happens, we cut to the next morning and see Zosa naked in Carol's bed, implying that they had sex overnight. Carol has fully changed over a new leaf and has accepted the others, but more importantly, has accepted Zosa. My mind is still unable to comprehend if Zosa as an individual possibly kissing Carol, or if this was the others collectively deciding to kiss Carol. Was this a power move by the others to take advantage of Carol's vulnerability, and did Carol do the same? After she was kissed, did Carol see this as an opportunity to really make the others think that they got the best of her and she's no longer looking to fixing things back to what they used to be? Again, this goes back to the belladonna conversation. Who's the poisonous, toxic person in the situation? Is it the others manipulating Carol, or is it the other way around? But I also want to bring up this important character moment for Carol. The idea that the others can't physically feel the kiss or having sex, But thinking about the fact that 7 billion people know that Carol slept with Zosa is huge for the character. You all have to remember that before the joining, Carol was a closeted woman who couldn't even express herself and even had her once female-led character in the books to become a man and was afraid to share that with her so-called diehard fans because she was too afraid to do so. Again, her parents literally tried to change her by having her go to a conversion camp, but now, in front of billions, she's fully embracing who she is. This entire scene has so much complexity, is so layered with truths and lies and emotions, and just adds so much depth to the show and to the particular relationship between our characters. Next morning, now feeling energized and encouraged, we see Carol woke up early and wrote one chapter of her new book, and she has Zosa read it. Zosa comes out and shares her excitement about Raban now officially being changed into a woman as it was originally written. Now, this isn't just a plot point anymore, it's a mirror to Carol's situation. Again, Carol finally accepted herself in front of the literal world. Now, tapping into the hive mind of Carol's diehard fans, we see Zosa and Carol nerd out about how Raban is now a woman, and Zosa tells Carol how much she, as the pronoun I, loves it. Now, watching Zosa and Carol nerd out about the minutia of how Raban's a female sounds like a bunch of gibberish right now, but it wouldn't surprise me if this was the show's way of foreshadowing clues to how Carol might actually find a way to fixing the world by using her book. It is now day 60, hour 8, 59 minutes and 30 seconds. It's been a little over 3 weeks since the reunion, and we see Carol and Zosa are practically living together now. We hear the radio station playing in the background and everything seems normal and happy, and we see Carol looks at Helen's grave, and man, talk about the meaning of a look. What does that look mean, and the pause that she has here? Is she ashamed, like she's moved on, betrayed Helen, or is it the opposite? A promise that she will never forget her. This doesn't change what they had, because potentially loving Zosa doesn't erase loving Helen. And maybe that's the point. Carol isn't replacing one love with another, she's expanding, making space. Now we see this new couple are preparing food together, real food, not smoothies, as Zosa isn't starving, she's actually eating with Carol as this new version of herself in Carol's eyes, choosing individuality. We see Zosa is now, with the help of Carol, is making more of an effort to referring to herself as I rather than we or us like she did before. As we watch, Zosa shares a memory of Zosa's childhood and how she discovered her favorite food, which happens to be mango ice cream, which by the way is pretty fire if you ask me. Carol's thankful for her sharing this, but like what happened at the diner, reality yet again kicks in. Zosa stops and communicates with the others and shares with Carol that she's going to have a visitor soon. And it's the one person who has no interest, no care or respect or affection towards the others. It's Manousos. We end this episode with seeing him rebandaging his wounds, and he is now only 31 miles away from finally coming face to face with the one person in the world that he knows wants the same thing that he does. That obviously being avoiding the others, no matter the cost, even if it means death, and more importantly, fixing the world back to how it used to be. But as we know, that used to be Carol's goal, maybe still is, but this isn't as clear as it was months ago at this point, as she's now found maybe love for the others in Zosa, making the situation more difficult and complicated ahead of next week's finale. Making it where when Manousos arrives, he's not walking into a reunion of allies, he's walking into a very complex situation. Carol might be the only person in the world that wants to fix the world with him, but she might not want to fix it in the way that he does. And again, that makes this whole situation unstable. Now, going all the way back to the start of this breakdown when we discussed the title of this episode and went over the red flags of the charm and fence. Everything we saw was a red flag from the others. They told Carol everything she wanted to hear with the overly excitement of the reactions they gave her about her writing again. They love bombed Carol with all the little cute dates and gifted her by rebuilding her favorite diner. So many signs that something isn't right, yet Carol has fallen for it, or she's still secretly playing along to gain their trust, or maybe both. Overall, I love this episode from beginning to end. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this topic, but recently Apple shared that Pluribus was the most watched television on their platform, but they didn't provide much context on what exactly that meant. But in doing so, I saw a lot of pushback from people online. Now, by pushback, I'm referring to people week to week rightfully praising the show's acting, the writing, the premise, the production, but saying that it's unbelievably slow in its pacing. Look, I can see how one can feel that way and how the show is maybe moving at a slower pace for them, but for me, I'm the complete opposite. All the positives I agree with as far as the production, the direction, the writing, the acting, all that stuff, but as far as the pacing goes, to me, it really works because I have thoroughly enjoyed the character study that the show is exploring and also showing us the moral questioning and it posing each week to us as an audience of what would we do in this situation. Again, I have a lot of thoughts on this particular topic, but we don't have much time to dive into all that stuff. But all I'll say is at the end of the day, I am really enjoying this show and I really love this episode. And I think next week's finale will end in a very interesting way. Now, I predicted this last week and I still think this could happen in next week's finale and that we will see Carol and Zosa being this couple. And I still believe that Carol will learn something bad about the others. Maybe the whole egg stem reveal will come back into play in next week's finale. I believe Carol may defend her decision with being with Zosa and the others when Manousos arrives, but I think things will probably change and Carol will ultimately join him and abandoning the others again, and of course fixing the world back to how it used to be and breaking things off with Zosa. But we'll have to find out what happens next week. With all that being said, we have come to the end of this week's breakdown of the penultimate episode, episode 8 of season 1 of Pluribus. This was a lot of stuff to talk about here in this breakdown, but now I want to know what you all thought about what worked, what didn't work, your deeper meanings, your theories for next week. Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Thank you all for watching or listening to this week's breakdown. Now, of course, if you all have made it to this point in the breakdown, I really appreciate the support. Do me a favor by letting me know that you all are still here by putting in the comments right now, #MangoIceCream. If you all enjoyed yourself, do me a favor, hit that like button, and if you're watching this on YouTube, also hit the hype button, which allows this video to spread out to new viewers. Also, if you all could share this video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show, I would greatly appreciate it. And also, last but not least, consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel today, where we're talking about Pluribus, where we're talking about Stranger Things coming back, and all the new movies. Again, if that sounds like something you all would like, stick around and subscribe to the channel today. Now, for my podcast listeners out there, I appreciate you all. If you could do the same by leaving your thoughts on this episode, whether that's on Apple or Spotify or wherever you all get your podcast from. Also, do me a favor, stick around by following the podcast, leaving me a rating and review. I would appreciate the support. Alrighty, y'all, until next time, remember that you all are awesome. Stay safe out there. And also remember, when you meet someone that you like, check out for all the red flags that we saw from Zosa and the others in this episode. Alrighty, y'all, I'll see you again soon.